Hi, I'm Patrick, a watercolor artist from Sydney, and today I'd like to show you a simple and fun exercise that will help improve your variegated washes, which means going from one color to another in a nice and even transition while the paper's wet. I'm going to do this exercise in two different variations and using only three pigments across the two paintings. This exercise will also help you get a better understanding of your pigment to water ratios and how different colors interact and mix together when the paper's wet. I hope you enjoy this exercise and find it useful. Thanks for watching, and let's get started. So for my exercises, I quite often use the back of a failed painting, 300 GSM Coldpress cotton paper. And a reason for that is that I can't really use the backs of paintings for anything else because I don't really like the texture. So I wet this all over with clean water, and I speed this up a little bit, but I be quite generous with my water just to get the paper nice and wet and saturated. Next thing I do is I mix my first color, which is the Raw Sienna in this case, and I just make a bit of a watery wash there. I've already got a lot of water on the paper, so I don't need to add too much more water. And then I just gently paint from top to bottom and let the pigment run out towards the bottom of the page. I want a bit of a gradated wash here, so a bit stronger pigment at the top, a bit lighter at the bottom. And I'm just dipping my brush in there a couple of times. Not sure if you can see that, but my board's actually on an angle, probably about 30 degrees. This really will help with the water running down, so gravity will pull both the water and the pigment from the top to the bottom. I'm now speeding up. The next section, I'm just going to basically repeat what I've done on the right hand side. Same consistency of paint. Add another gradient in there. A little bit darker at the top, a little bit lighter at the bottom. As I'm holding this up to the light, you can see how shiny the paper now is. We've got, two layers of water on there. The first one, the clean water, and then we added a really thin wash over the top. So the paper's quite saturated now and quite wet. Now I'm starting to add my second color, which is a cerulean blue. And for this, second color, I'm going to make sure that the consistency is a little bit thicker than the first one. So more pigment, less water, because I don't want to necessarily add, too much more water, because that's what gives you the blooms and the backgrounds and these sorts of things. So similar as with my first color, I just, try and create an even wash from top to bottom. And I want to let this run out towards the bottom, and you can see that I've sort of done that. I've sort of stopped, 2/3 down the bottom, lifted my brush off the paper so it's nice and light, and add less and less pigment. And I'm now going back into the top and add some stronger blue to it. And as long as your paper is wet, you can pretty much keep adding pigment and move things around without, too much impact. Happy with the blue color, I'm just going to leave it there. And now I'll do the same with my red, with my quinacridone rose color. And same as before, just making sure that this second layer is just a little bit thicker than the first, so less water, more pigment. And that's kind of the rule for every, layer you put on top into a wet wash. It has to be less water than what's already on the paper. Otherwise, you'll create blooms and cauliflowers and those sorts of things. So now I'm just going to do the same thing one more time with the red color, with the rose color. As I go down the page, my pigment is running out on my brush, so it gets lighter. I lift the brush up a little bit more so that I touch, or push down onto the paper less than before. And that's how you achieve these gradients from top to bottom. And again, making sure that I darken the top as much as I feel like. But remember, this now has got a lot of water, so we're on that third layer, wet and wet. And the more water you have on the paper combined, the lighter it all will dry. So this will dry, still reasonably light, even though right now it looks a little bit stronger than you'd expect. And there's no real hard, fast rule when to stop. Just whenever you feel like you've achieved what you're trying to achieve, it'll dry probably 30-40% lighter than what you see now. And I just keep gently brushing a bit more pigment at the top until I'm happy. So my paper is now completely dry before I continue with adding another layer. If you want, you can stop right here and just practice this part, just layering the two colors and sort of fading one into another and creating these nice soft transitions, these variegated washes. But as you know, I'm going to continue going and I'm going to add some middle and foreground into this painting. And for this, I'm going to add a bit stronger value for some distant hills first, and I'm mixing them out of the same two colors, the cerulean blue and the raw sienna. That way I create a nice color harmony rather than introducing a new pigment or a new color or, a green out of a tube. I like to mix my colors from a few colors. I'm working with the three primaries, a yellow, a blue, and a red, so I can really mix anything I like without risking creating a color palette that doesn't work together. So this is quite harmonious. And for this next layer, it's just got to be a little bit thicker, the paint. It's got to be a bit stronger. The paper's dry, so it doesn't really matter. You could go in with a really thin wash if you wanted to, but I want to create a little bit of contrast and a bit more strength. While this dries, I'm moving on to my left side of the painting, and I'll sort of do the same thing, just a little bit different. For this, I'm mixing a bit of a darkish purple, purpley brown. So I'm kind of using, the blue, the red, and a little bit of the yellow just to sort of mute it a bit. As you layer your paints on top of each other, and when I create stronger values and tones, you obviously have to put more pigment and less water in it, but I'm sure you know that already. I'm just showing it as here so you can kind of see how pasty this is getting. So the paint doesn't really move too much on the palette at all, so it hasn't got a lot of water in it. And that's it. First I draw my horizon line so that it's nice and straight in one go. And then I can go over the top and add sort of a tree line I'm going for here. So I'm trying to brush it a little bit, move my brush around, squeeze it, turn it so that it's not all the same, and add a bit of variation, both in the texture and the tone as I go across. And you can see I keep dipping into my paint just to make sure that, I keep that nice dark consistency. It's still looking a little bit too monotone for me, so I'm mixing a little bit of a darker purple here and just brush in a few more foreground trees, just to create, again, more of depth and an illusion of three-dimensionality. And even though we've used a lot less water than in the first layers, the pigments will still mix and mingle on the paper and create nice transitions within this tree line. It's still looking quite empty, so I want to add a few clouds in the sky, and I've added a bit of yellow to my purple mix just to make it a bit warmer, because it's those clouds that catch the last of the sunlight as it disappears behind the horizon. And you got to be quite careful here not to overwork it. It's very easy to keep going, but really it's just a few light touches, a few drags of the brush. I'm adding a little bit more water to this purpley mix now because I want to do some reflections in the water just to finish it off here, and that can't be too dry. Well, it could be, you could dry brush it, but for what I'm got in mind here, I just need a little bit more water so it's a bit more fluid and I can easily paint in some reflection. You can see I'm holding the brush right at the end and I just flick it with my wrist and make it quite loose. So don't hold too tight, don't be too controlled with this. Just a few flicks for some water reflections, and I'm connecting the trees into this water reflection just so that a little bit of the paint can run from the top to the bottom. Alright, let's move back to the blue side of the painting and finish that off too. And I'm going to add a closer line of trees, and that means I have to mix a darker version of my green. So more raw sienna, a bit more blue, and again it's a very strong mix. This now has very little water in it, and you can see on the palette the paint doesn't move at all anymore. So I gotta match that horizon line at the bottom because I'm going over the top of it. So one strong, confident stroke from left to right for me because I'm left-handed. If you're right-handed, you probably want to do most of what I've done the other way around, working from, left to right, but I got to always work from right to left. And just like in that red tree line, I'm twisting and turning my brush, trying to create texture and variation in those trees, create the illusion of light and dark, of sunlight hitting the top of the trees and shadows, and just tricking our brain into seeing trees rather than paint on paper. And I'm continuing to change the color a little bit here, add a bit more blue. Again, it's all about variations, all about creating gradients. It's all about just creating visual interest. And to top it off, I just want to add a little bit of life, a little bit of movement to those simple paintings here, and birds are always a fantastic option for that. Careful you don't overdo it. Again, restrained, not too many. And looking for that variations at different angles, different sizes. But just like the clouds, very tempting to keep going with those birds because they're so much fun. But, only a few. Usually odd numbers work well, 3 or 5. The same on the blue side. This time I'm going to add one sort of just coming out of those trees to kind of connect the sky with that foreground. And that's it. We're done. We've turned a simple but useful exercise into 2 lovely little landscapes. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you try it out and practice your variegated washes. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.